You're listening to the Middleman Podcast with me, Tom Lemongello, and my co-host, Todd Zawicki. Our careers have put us in the middle between retail, media, and brands. But retail media is a closed loop, so we're here to open up the channel and let you listen in. Join our discussions with the people who make retail media happen. Hey, Todd.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking with Jeff Cohen, and we started to know him when he was at Amazon earlier this year. And what was interesting for me was that he was basically like the evangelist for Amazon, bringing all of those brands together and going all over the world and trying to evangelize what Amazon's retail media could do for them. I had a lot of fun on this discussion, hearing sort of his story.
Well, I think also part of the fun is it dates back to your early involvement in retail media. And though not a quotient person per se, obviously touches the world that you guys were a part of. And, again, speaks to your roots, deep roots in this space and this ecosystem. And if you are like, to me, honestly, we can rename the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game when it comes to Hollywood actors to the 6 Degrees of Tom Lemongello when it comes to retail media. If you can't get to someone in retail media with like 6 steps, like honestly 2 steps with you, I'd be, oh my gosh, it'd be shocked, right? I think this is part of that story of how interconnected your quotient/coupons.com was and your background. So anyway, that's just a little bit of a side of,
but I wasn't that
network.
Connected to Amazon, right? So yeah. So
but you were, turns out, only a degree or two away. But I think what's nice about Jeff's story is we've talked about the rise of retail media and where did it come from? And it just didn't happen overnight. And we haven't really heard the story of the rise of Amazon per se, right? In terms of why did it become so successful? What drove its success? From someone who was inside the firewall at Amazon, and Jeff was. And, he can give perspective as to what he thinks led to the rise of Amazon and why it was successful, especially now that he's no longer at Amazon. He can give perspective. And to be clear, Jeff's not saying anything that is proprietary or confidential or anything like that, and is giving his sort of own personal opinions as to what led, sort of generally speaking, to the rise of Amazon. And so I think that's an important discussion point and story for people to hear and understand of how did we get here to where we are. And I think that's a key part of what Jeff and us talk about.
The key thing that we wanted to know was, hey, you're leaving Amazon. What could be better than being at Amazon? He's moving to Skai, or he's moved to Skai as Chief Business Officer there. What does he see as the opportunity for a platform like Skai?
And in terms of speaking about the future of retail media, I think we're going to hear a lot about this in terms of, all right, what happens to that 15% as it moves from 15 to 30 or probably 50% of retail media? And that's, again, not stealing share. It's stealing share from Amazon, but not stealing dollars. Like the whole space is going to grow. It's just going to grow disproportionately, we think, in that 15%, the non-Amazon, non-Walmart 15%. And I think one of the
it's kind of the discussion that we had with Brian at Albertsons. It's, doing a better job of the time spent with those retailers.
Exactly. And I think now, if you're a retail media buyer, the challenge is going to be the perceived fragmentation, meaning there's going to be a lot of players. That 15% isn't going to be 2 or 3. It's going to be 50, 100, right? There's 400 retail media networks. So how are buyers going to deal with that fragmentation? And programmatic doesn't exist in the same way it does in the open web across retail media. So what does that orchestration layer look like? And platforms like Skai and others are looking at providing solutions so the buyers can plan more seamlessly, buy more seamlessly. And by the way, reducing friction will allow more dollars to go to that space. And if we want agencies to show up here, they're going to need platforms like, again, Skai and Zitcha and others. And I think that's, where it becomes interesting is how do we make sure that it's easy to buy and spend dollars effectively, right? Not just give dollars away, so that buyers can touch as many as these retail networks as makes sense. And I think that's where a lot of the growth will come from. So that's really important to look ahead and see where platforms like Skai will help reduce that friction. And so people like Jeff are going to be important, and Skai are going to be important to help enable growth and outsized growth in that 15%. And so in a lot of ways, Jeff's moving to, I think, where the puck is going. We've talked about this in terms of that 15% turning into 50% is I think we're going to be a lot of the interesting actions going to be, and it'll be important to follow companies like Skai as they help try to make it as easy as possible to go from 15 to 50%.
Yeah, well, Jeff, with his roots of being, really close to the buyers and the brands, he's the kind of guy who pays it forward and is always talking about what's coming next. So let's get into the discussion with him and see what he's talking about at grocery shop. All right, so Jeff is joining us on The Middlemen. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, appreciate it. Glad to be joining you guys.
So how many grocery shops have you been to? Is this your first?
This is my first grocery shop, yeah.
Okay, it's my first since 2018, so it's really good to
My
be
first
back.
ever. Shop Talk I've been to many times, but
Right.
first grocery shop. And grocery shop is run by the same people who run Shop Talk, so to be clear.
Yeah, so we're excited to be here. I knew you because you were at Amazon.
Right.
And it was just about the time when Amazon was going to launch its capability for sponsored ads to help retailers who were not Amazon to be on the platform. So let's talk about your tenure at Amazon. You were an evangelist for the seller community. Then you were sort of there for the rise of AMC. So tell us that story.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I spent a number of years before Amazon building ad tech that third-party sellers were using to manage advertising, which built me a lot of...
like in the Amazon ecosystem?
In the Amazon ecosystem. Yeah, so we were competing against PackView, Perpetua, Downstream Media, some of the early players in the space, but our audience was more on the third-party side than where they were more targeting the first-party sellers. And what I learned from that was that the industry needed a lot of education.
Yeah.
Back in the early days, 2016, people didn't even know what a keyword was or what a search term was or the difference between a keyword and a search term. And so I started building a personal reputation for doing a lot of just education around what is Amazon ads, how do you use it, where do you make investments, how do you tell if the investments are worthwhile. We were all making up these terms in the industry, tacos and ACOS and other things that didn't exist beforehand.
I love tacos, right? Like as an acronym. It's a lot more playful than a lot of traditional tech or ad techy acronyms, like ROAS.
Right.
But taco sounds cool.
Taco sounds like fun. What does taco stand for?
Total advertising cost of sale. It was when we realized that you needed to take all of your ads and your non-spend, your ad spend and your total sales and divide it by your ad cost, not just your advertising cost divided by conversion, right? And, we were making up terms, for lack of a better word, we were making up terms in the industry to help people understand how to see whether their ads were working, whether their investments were paying off, whether they should be continuing to double down on this thing called sponsored products. That led me to get recruited by somebody, and I made a joke. I said, well, the only job I would ever take is if Amazon paid me to fly around the world and teach people about Amazon advertising. And about 3 months after that, I was interviewing for a job as a tech evangelist for Amazon ads. And so when I first joined them, I joined the partner organization working with developers as a customer. Mm-hmm. So a very tech evangelist type of role with developers as the customer, but that kind of quickly grew into working with the whole partner community. So I worked with our 3,500 partners worldwide, everything from PackView, Flywheel, to the Skais, and to the smaller, upstart companies like an AdBrew or a Trellis, who were, building new technology that didn't exist in the space before.
One of the fascinating things, I think, as we as a podcast have heard a lot about people attacking Amazon now. And we haven't, but Amazon's 50%, maybe 60% of retail media spend, Walmart being in second place and 15% for everyone else. What do you think led to Amazon doing so well in terms of building out their retail media business to the point where they are the 800-pound gorilla at this point? And what's your perspective on how they got to where they got?
Yeah. I think how they got to where they got was a combination of right place, right time, right technology, right? Amazon was growing, the third-party marketplace was growing. And if you think about the simplicity of Amazon ads 10 years ago, it was search, find, buy, right? It was just simply enter in a search term, look at the results, and buy. And sponsored products almost worked too well. right? The conversion rate from early days of sponsored product ads were really high, and advertisers saw a great return on their investment for every dollar that they put in. As competition grew, right, as the cost of ads started to go up, which is natural that it's going to happen.
Right. Bidded marketplace, saturation, this is what happens.
Exactly. Advertisers found it more difficult. And so, well, naturally, you go and you blame the platform, right? It's Amazon's fault that costs have gone up. Well, I don't think it was really Amazon's fault that the cost went up. I think it was just a natural progression of what happened.
I mean, it happened in Google too, and Facebook. And
exactly. And if you were there early, you got clicks for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
And
then maybe there was potentially others hadn't caught up, so that was still, well, I'll put all my money in Amazon because that's more performance based.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, but I think the other part of it was there was a challenger mentality at Amazon, or there is a challenger mentality at Amazon. It hasn't gone away. And so you get these upstart brands like a Poppy who lean into Amazon as a Amazon first company. And everything that they're doing is to build audience, reach, and sales on Amazon. And then you have incumbent brands who have more restrictions in their ad budgets and in how they're measuring, who aren't making those investments. And so I don't want to say it was easy to steal market share, but it is, because when I was working with third-party sellers literally looked at Amazon ads, or they look at Amazon ads as a ATM machine. If I put $1 into it and it spits $3 back, I'm going to keep putting dollars in as fast as I can. Well, enterprise brands have a budget. They have a budget that they're going to spend for the month, and then they're going to annualize that as a per day. And if their ads are exceeding their expectations, they don't increase their budget. That's their limitation for the day. And so that creates an environment where challenger brands can take market share. And that, I think, is what led to a lot of the excitement around Amazon as a brand growth platform. And advertising was just a way to accelerate the growth of your brand even faster.
You're now at Skai, right? And feel free to give a description of Skai for the audience, who's not everyone's familiar with that. And you now can give a good outsider's perspective on Amazon, right? You're no longer under employee NDA and so forth. And so I'm really curious, what is your perspective on the strengths and weaknesses of Amazon's ad platform today as a third party, as a company like Skai who helps give insights to advertisers around Amazon? It would be great to kind of get your perspective on Amazon today.
Yeah.
Its strengths and weaknesses as an RMN.
Well, thank you. Skai is an omnichannel management platform for search, social, and commerce. And I think that kind of leans towards maybe, I don't want to say the weakness of Amazon, but maybe where my interest in moving to Skai from Amazon came from, which is the idea that for brands to be successful today, they need an omni-channel approach. They need to understand how their ads are impacting their particular channel that they're advertising on, but also the other channels. And so one thing I saw at Amazon was that when you were advertising on Amazon, and Amazon grew their inventory for middle and upper funnel ads and the expansion of Prime Video, we were seeing incremental growth that was occurring on your D2C site, on your other channels, even your in-store.
So there was a halo.
There's definitely a halo, 100%.
That's what everybody says there is, but yeah.
Well, the critics haven't said and questioned that, right? In terms of but your data says there was, and you're now a part of a company that's now looking at that every day.
Right. And so when I was at Amazon, what we would do is we would take the first party data from your website, we would then integrate it in through an AMC clean room to understand what type of incrementality was occurring on your website versus what was happening on Amazon. And you could see that. So you could see that halo effect was there. So the question that brands have to answer is, if I have $1 to spend, where do I want to spend it? And so where do other retail media networks come in? Well, there's a lot of incrementality that's out there as you're growing within your digital shelf or within your category, or if you're trying to expand and build your own category, right? And I actually think that the brands that have been the most successful are the ones that have been able to build their own category, right? Think about like non-alcoholic drinks and the expansion of that category in the last 2 years. And I'll go back to Poppy as the example, right? They created a whole new category for their product. And we've seen a number of brands do that. And so you need to have this omni-channel approach of what's happening within your main channels, but also where can you go deep where your audience is already shopping. It's meeting your shoppers where they are, and investing your dollars at that omni-channel to get the overall impact that you want across your brand. And so like that's where Amazon doesn't play today.
Right.
That a tool like Skai and others in the space can give a brand that more holistic view of what's happening. And that's, I think, the challenge. There's two big challenges that I think brands are facing today. One is, well, there's a lot of challenges.
Right. But in particular to this
topic, there's two. One is organizationally, right?
We've heard that's been a common theme for the last year since we started this podcast.
Brand dollars and performance dollars are intersecting, and you need to
trade, right, as another component, right? There's brand performance and trade in addition to that.
And you need to be able to see how one is impacting the other. So that's clear. Two is that shoppers are shopping where they're comfortable, and you need to go out and you need to reach them in their audiences.
It's interesting you talk about that, because Tom and I had this conversation with Sarah Marzano and earlier we talked to Brian Monahan from Albertsons, who's now running their retail media network. And what's fascinating is how retailers are not capturing their percentage of spend. When you look at that, like their shopper time spent, shopper dollars spent, like they're under capturing those dollars, much like digital did 15 years ago, right? We always talked about digital's time spent and it was underrepresented. Mary Meeker would every year in her report State of the Internet would talk about this. And I think we're at that same level. And so it's interesting you talk about that, which is what is the unlock that helps unlock that, right, where those dollars can go? Because you're like saying, hey, we're Skai, we want to spend where the shopper is. Yep. Is it a product challenge? What's the challenges to enable that spend with those other retailers, so it's not 15% of retail media spend that they capture, but maybe 50% or 60 or 70%, because Amazon's percentage of total retail spend is like 5%,
right?
Not 70%.
What we're hearing at Grocery Shop, and we had a chance to talk to Bobby Watts over at Ahold Delhaize, and what he was saying was, if you look at the old retail media model during the pandemic, and I was at Quotient, we would work with them, and we'd have, the category buyer, the brand buyer was 6 months old, 2 years old. That type of data, you would never see the Poppy buyer.
Yep.
Because there was no Poppy before. There was no fiber drinks or prebiotic drinks. Same thing with GLP-1s. There's all sorts of different categories that they should be into. And when talking to a lot of people at Grocery Shop, everybody's saying new to brand is really big. A lot of people are saying new to category is even more important. So is that something that Amazon was good at or not good at? And then to Todd's point, is that what brands are looking at to maybe spend with Ahold or Albertsons or whomever?
My answer to that question is that I think Amazon is good at it, but they didn't realize they were good at it. Okay. Right? Like Amazon was creating categories, or was Amazon has been a place where categories have been able to be created.
Yeah.
And
is that because like the reviews and the other things that the retailers didn't have? Or?
I think it's also because of search context.
Yeah.
And how people are finding and discovering products, right? And it's maybe like it wasn't deliberately part of the process. But when you walk into, I always like to say, when you go back to the physical store and you walk into the store, you go in and you look for what you're specifically looking to buy. And the beauty of the digital shelf is that you can be looking for what you're specifically looking to buy, but you can be finding other things that are tangentially connected to it that maybe pique an interest to you. And
right, people bought this, also bought this.
Yeah,
right.
Amazon really doubled down on like those carousels of like, taking your behavioral, and purchase behavior and saying like, what about this? What about this? What about this?
Right, because if you do it in a physical store, you have to go to a totally different aisle to be able to find those things. Maybe there's an end cap that's doing it or something like that. But so I think it's one of those. To get back to the specific question, I think Amazon was inadvertently creating new categories as search behavior was changing.
Yeah, they had more fluid shelves, I guess.
Right. And so, the consumer was the one that ultimately won, because I would like to say that the strongest signal at Amazon was that you searched for something, you found it, you bought it, and you wrote a review, right? It's the strongest signal that Amazon has. And as that process continues to repeat itself, that then builds itself into a category. Every time people are searching for these types of things, they're buying these and they're happy.
I think what's interesting is, as we look to broaden retail media, right? I'm 100% convinced that 15% today will be 50 or 75%, right? More representative of their share of retail spend over time, right? The dollars should flow to where the purchases are, where the time spent is, and obviously in stores this huge unlock over the next 5 to 10 years. Like that, Tom and I get super excited about that. But also I think part of it is, to your point of like even working at Skai now, is how do I make it easier to spend across these retailers? If the person is going into store A, how easy is it to buy in store A and buy media for store A versus store B? And I think the reality is a lot of those systems are it's hard to do cross retailer buys until things like Skai get more embedded, more popular. As a guy who grew up in ad tech, right? My background's, I'm an ad tech guy. I built a DSP, a very successful DSP. And so what made programmatic take off was as the tooling got better and easier for the buyers, especially at agencies, they could buy cross exchange and buy cross publisher. It enabled a whole slew of digital media spend. That was the unlock for digital media, was the rise of programmatic.
Right.
And I'm not saying programmatic specifically in the case of retailers, but tools like Skai have to become more popular. And I think the third-party tools at Amazon made it better. Like it made it so easy to buy however you wanted to buy.
Yep.
It was Amazon plus 100 other tools. And now those 100 other tools, as they get plugged into these other retailers and their platforms, maybe that unlocks it. And I think that's, to me, we have to make it easier to buy. We have to make it easier for agencies to buy, be part of planning and to be part of what happens. And so I don't know if you have that same perspective on is that third-party platform ecosystems now starts integrating with the rest of retail media.
Yeah.
Is that the same unlock that maybe helped Amazon too?
Yeah, I think that's where the unlock of AI is going to come in. Right, is that AI, you can ask these very challenging questions too, of like, if I'm going to spend more money, where should I spend it? And I think that, we've been developing AI for the last 2.5 years. And when it first came out, like a lot of AI in the system, that AI was designed to have high operational efficiency. But as we've trained it at the user level, the hands-on keyboard level, it can now answer the difficult questions that you have.
So when you're talking about AI, you're talking about helping media buyers buy campaigns, or like set up and do ad ops, or is it something else?
Mainly right now, our AI is around the planning and the planning and the measurement, but activation will definitely come over time.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. No, I think that's a good point, right? That it's the how, your point, it was easy to buy at Amazon. Put in a keyword, you put in a little bit, It felt like Google, it was easy. And I think as multi-retailer purchasing shows up, and I think ultimately that has to happen, right? That is the unlock. Just like, again, programmatic made multi-publisher buys super easy.
Yep.
You followed your audience around wherever they went. And to your point, maybe that's a bit, but your AI maybe solves for some of the integration and operational challenges of how do you set up a campaign? I don't even know what retailers to add if I want to target a particular product or audience or category. Right. Like who's strong in these areas? And I'm not sure the retailers have unlocked that data in the same way. Like, is it, or category buying is a great example. Like if I wanted to buy across a category, do the retailers all use the same definitions of what a category is? Probably
not.
They don't.
Right? I think that's why you got Instacart is kind of winning hand over fist there.
Well, and what's interesting is that IAB on the programmatic side solved this because there's an IAB like standard category list that made it easy to do. Now, audience buying became more of a challenge, but you could buy from third-party audience vendors who were cross-publishing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really exist in the retailers because you want to buy the actual like loyalty program people matched to an email, again, through clean rooms. Yep. But if the category names are different, who's creating the master category mapping and maybe
this is my chance to ask for what I want, right? Which is that,
do we get standards? Is that what
right?
We have to be
Well, I do think we need standards. Right, I think standards are going to come over time. They usually are delayed.
Does IB maybe step into here in a way?
Well, they just
announced
the AI AI board.
That's AI, but not like retail media specific.
Yeah.
Like this category, like okay, let's normalize categories. Let's come up with a standard
topology
for this.
I think what we're going to need is signals coming from the retailers that help train the AI to say, when you're seeing this and this and this, like using Instacart as an example, when you're seeing this and this and this, that is an indication that you should be investing in, long tail retailers, and Instacart is your opportunity to do it. And then you implement a test and learn.
Well,
right?
So you can talk about this on the data analytics side. It was all about like, how well does the brand index in that specific retailer? Like,
right.
You might be, a beauty brand, and you get incredible brand index at like Sephora, Ulta, whatever. But you're also at Albertsons, or they're also at CVS, and you have the situation where the size of the store and the amount of transactions that flow through there, you look really small comparatively, right? So like those signals would be great, but is anybody going to share those?
I think they will over time. They're not being shared right now.
Albertsons just announced their API, the data for the first time, and maybe that's a huge. By the way, that's a huge step because they're really such a large grocery player. Yeah. It's not one of these long tail guys doing it. It's a major player doing it. It's for, as AI is making more decisions on our behalf and helping us to get the data that we need, right? I'm a true believer that needs to be a human in the loop. These aren't just like black box type of decisions. The retailers will start to provide the additional signals that are necessary, either clean room to clean room type of conversation, or just, signals of what type of audiences are available. One of the things I learned at Amazon was every time I learned about a new product at Amazon, I was always blown away because you'd like, oh, okay, like I'm now learning more about podcast, right? And all of a sudden you're talking to the podcast team and you find out that podcast has a 40% incrementality of people who are not watching Prime Video or streaming television. And at first I hear that and I'm like, well, that's a really high number. And then I stop and I think about it and I'm like, wait, that's my wife. Like my wife doesn't watch streaming television. She reads books and she listens to podcasts. Yeah. And so as we can think about that from an audience type of perspective, and if the retailers can give us the signals that help us indicate where those type of signals would match to shopper intent, then the AI can become more intelligent to make the decisions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, retailers need to be doing continuous test and learn, and that's how they're all growing and expanding of what they're doing. And if AI can help them make more intelligent decisions, you can speed up that process. Well, I think what's fascinating here also is we think about RMNs. RMNs are evolving in the world of AI, where early RMN like Amazon or programmatic did not. It was pre-AI.
Yep.
And it required a lot more data sharing and topology and standards. And to your point, maybe AI helps this evolution go faster to go retailer to retailer in a way that we hadn't necessarily had happen before. And so I think it's an interesting use case of like, how does AI help unlock RMNs faster? Right? Because I think the biggest question, and I for that, the long tail, that 15% of RMN spend that everyone but Walmart and Amazon represents, is going to grow substantially. It's going to grow 10x. They're going to be they're 50%, 70% of retail transactions and time spent, and it's got to go there. And does RMN, I think to your use case of AI can help you push those into all those pockets of inventory so much faster than if we wait for 5 years of standards discussions to versus just
also there's lots of in-store data signals that are not being used, right?
There's a ton. There's so much.
But for you at Skai, you're an omnichannel guy, but there's so much opportunity in marketplace. Why would you even worry about in-store at this point, right? Like, so what is the disposition of Skai in terms of being omnichannel today?
I still believe that what's happening online is driving what's happening in store.
Right.
And so if your brand is in store and you've got physical shelf, when you're making the online investments, you're driving online sales, and vice versa is true as well, right? We've all sat at the store, looked at something and bought something. Right.
There's all that.
So all of that is and has to be at play. And with that, in mind, like that just ultimately comes down to the point that you have to be able to measure your investment, and you have to be able to understand what the impact of those investments are, right? I mean, at the core of our technology sits measurement. right? And when you onboard onto our technology, a lot of our time and investment at the beginning is around making sure we understand how you look at, perceive, operate your business, so that, because it's got to be clean data in to get clean data out, right?
Biggest believer in, garbage in, garbage out when it comes to data.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and so by taking that as like the core and building upon that, you can then start to, build and grow. One of the things that I've, in my short time at Skai, I haven't been here a long time, but one of the things I've learned is that Skai is one of those enterprise tools that you've got to, as a company, you've got to make an investment into. You don't just plug and play and the tool just does everything for you, right? You've got to invest your time, your energy.
But I think that's true for a lot of tools.
It is. Right? It is. One of the things I learned way before I even joined Amazon was we would have people who, we were in a low-end SaaS product, right? We were selling ad tech software for under $100, and people would sign up and they would buy our software and they would run us for our 30-day free trial. They'd pay for a month and then they would cancel. And when you would ask them why they canceled, they said, well, your software didn't work. And
so at my DSP, we saw this all the time where people would run it for 30 days and it's not so good. And I'd be like, our best customers are ones who are, they get about 10% of the way there in month 1, 30% of the way there in month 2, 60 more percent, so they're at 90% in month 3, and then a month 4 is when really you saw it hone in. And so it's funny you had that same experience, which is, I think at a lot of platforms there's a test and learn evolves over time.
Yeah, and you want an instant gratification
for sure,
and it just doesn't it's happen.
Rare.
You have to make the investment of your hands-on keyboard team learning it, your leadership team learning it, and continuing to reinvest in it. So our best customers, the ones that have been with us for a really long time, are the ones who are understanding our product roadmap. They're explaining to us what they need from our roadmap. They're going through training, right? They're continuing to learn. And this is the case of whether you've ever used, HubSpot, Salesforce, right? If I take it out of the ad tech world, this isn't anything that's unique to our space.
Complicated software is complicated,
right?
And when means time.
And I think where I think AI is going to help is that AI with systems operations and procedures is actually where it shines, right?
Execution. I've read this where AI is best at execution, not at the ideation.
Correct.
Right? And so to your point of amongst these channels, find me this very specific thing. It's good at doing the investigative, heavy lifting, dirty work that is humans would get bored at doing.
Right.
Versus, but it doesn't do a great job of identifying, well, what is the signal I need to look for?
Right.
And humans are better at novelty and understanding it, and then tasking sort of the robot army to go execute repetitive tasks.
So I think we're coming to a place where, and this would be interesting to hear. I don't know if you have this perspective because you just joined there, but it used to be Kenshu, and it was the leader in, really a keyword-based, search, sponsored search capability, right? So since you guys have been in this for so long, what is the thinking about how do you move from keywords, which are going to break very soon, to broader context?
Yeah. I'd love to say that I know that answer,
but it's fine if you don't, right? To be determined.
I think it. I mean, listen, a huge announcement was made yesterday from ChatGPT.
It was,
right, around agentic shopping and a
pre-agentic shopping. It's just they just have a cart attached to it.
Correct.
Right? They're not
step one.
No, great. Pre-agentic shopping. It is a step in that direction for sure.
And I think that one of the things that I think you have to keep in mind is also, generationally, this is going to all be applied differently, right? So how I shop is going to be different than how my parents shop, which is going to be different than how my children shop. But it's something I was already noticing. My kids are buying from Amazon because at the end of the day, I've trained them to go to Amazon, and they're both in college, or 2 of the 3 are in college, and the third one would get mad if he listened to this and I didn't mention him too. 2 of the 3 are in college, and they, when they need something, they're buying from Amazon for the same reason we buy from Amazon. It's quick, it's convenient, and it's delivered to their door.
Jeff Bezos always said Amazon at its heart is a logistics company.
Correct. And so I think when we look to the future and what search and the intersection of search and commerce is going to look like, it's really an unknown. There may be some visions for how ChatGPT and Perplexity and others have a vision of it. But I'll give you a great example. When I graduated college, not to date myself, but it was 1997.
I'm older, don't worry.
My friend's first job was a company, it might have been maybe a second job, was a company called Cosmo.com.
Oh, I remember Cosmo. We had I lived in Seattle, or still live in Seattle, and we had a competitor at Cosmo in Seattle called My Lackey.
Yes. And so Cosmo.com, for those people that don't know, would deliver your DVD.
DoorDash before DoorDash.
Right. It delivered your DVD and it was GoPuff before GoPuff, right? Like it was delivering your convenience goods and it was delivering your DVD. And my friend always laughs because he's like, man, I could have been a multimillionaire, but it wasn't his idea. He just worked there, but like it was a product that was before its time.
Oh yeah.
And so I think we're going to see quite a bit of things that come that are products before their time, because AI is moving so fast that I don't think the market is ready to move as fast as this is happening.
I think that's fair, even from an ad planning, management, buying, and RMNs. I think there are people who are trying AI as an overlay to help with this, and I think there are people who are skeptical, and I think we're at that early stage where we don't know. But I'm to the larger point of what Tom and I believe in, which is how do we unlock the larger ecosystem, which benefits Skai, by the way. I think Skai, and I think the tools that help make it easier to do cross-retailer buying are a huge unlock.
Yep.
So I'm super excited about companies like Skai as they tackle that problem, and we've been talking about this as an area for opportunity for companies.
Right.
It's a huge unlock. I've talked a lot about it. We really have to make it easier for agency planners to buy retail media at scale. I think it's the key to the open web. I think retailers are going to be buying or partnering with publishers.
Yep.
The data, like this is just the future, and it's going to be fascinating to watch it evolve and emerge outside of Amazon, because I think that's where the innovation is going to be and where you're playing in the non-Amazon part of the world. And I would say if Amazon loses share, that doesn't mean its growth rate in ads will go down. It just means there'll be a bigger growth on that last 15%. Right? We talk about this. Yeah. It's not that these retailers are going to steal from Amazon. They're just going to grow more of that spend in their direction.
Anyway,
we're super excited.
The pie is getting big. Right.
In 10-100x bigger.
Right. And I think that's some of the moves that Amazon's making too, is to be able to participate in that.
That's why they bought the DSP. That's what they're seeing, is like they see the future, and the DSP isn't about buying random ads. It's about how do I enable the broader ecosystem. A little bit of a competitor to Skai in that regard.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people who aren't going to trust Amazon to manage their spend for competitive and other reasons. So
well, and listen, if again, like there is a lot of use cases where you can use the technology on Amazon. There's a lot of use cases you can use the technology on Google when you want that omni-channel view and you want to be able to play in different RMNs. Then you need tools to be able to bring all that back together. And so there is value. You have to, as a business, no matter what you do, you have to build differentiation. And a lot of companies learn this in the early days of search, just trying to keep up with Google. And a lot of companies learn this in the early days of Amazon, trying to keep up with Amazon. Like, you have to build true differentiation of your product, because Amazon wants to make a self-service product. And there's nothing wrong with Amazon making a self-service product, because a lot of their customers are only selling on Amazon, and a self-service product meets their needs. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, I don't know if I had that attitude 2.5 weeks ago, because I supported all of the market. But I've always been a believer in any company that I've ever talked to, and the consulting I did through Amazon or before was, if you're not building differentiation, then the retail media network could put you out of business, because they're going to continually innovate. That's one thing I saw over and over again at Amazon, is they're continually pushing the envelope and trying to innovate, because they want to make it faster, less expensive, and they want to be able to demonstrate their value back to you as well.
And I think that's a fair point. And I think as Tom and I talk with more and more RMNs, they're really starting to see this as a product development task. Like talking with Brian at Albertsons, and he is the first to admit they have a big roadmap to make it easier to buy across Albertsons and their 23 brands, and how they make this more like an Amazon-like experience. And part of it's going to be partnering with companies like Skai, and part of it's going to be they have to do more on their own infrastructure. And it's going to be exciting to see where this all ends up over the next 3 to 5 years. And we're going to see a huge wave of innovation as the spend grows, the retailers get into this business, they're looking to do new and better and different things. And so it's an exciting time for longtime ad tech folks like myself. It's the first big wave of change, I think, probably in 10 or 15 years since the rise of programmatic.
Yeah, I think that I was actually having this conversation last night. If I was giving advice to my kids, I would say this is a great place to be. This is a great industry to be in. It's got so much runway.
It's going to be awesome. There's going to be so much change, and what we're going
it
to see.
definitely feels fun again.
Yeah,
I think it was like there was a 2 or 3 year period in there where, at least in the non-Amazon Walmart RMNs, where they were kind of, everybody was just changing dancing partners. They were like switching out ad servers and things like that. And this, at least for me, hearing all the measurement discussions that are happening now, I'm like, that is a sign that the smart people are back at the table and they are ready to work again.
Yeah. So, well, that was something I've learned over my career as well, is that, everything has to work backwards from measurement, right? Because if it's not measurable, then the investment isn't going to occur. And that's where I believe the way you build tech is that you build the measurement piece, and then you build the campaign planning side, and then you build the management side. Because if at the end of the day you need to just go change a bid, you can go into a system and change a bid, right? It maybe isn't the most convenient way to do it, but you can do that, and you don't need to keep up with every campaign bid function that exists. But to be able to have that measurement that's giving you the clear picture of what's happening, and then be able to put an AI layer on top of it to give you a secondary level of intelligence, is opening up all new kinds of worlds that didn't exist before.
Well, we are excited that you came to talk with us. And so I think it would be great to catch up in 6 months and let's talk again.
Great. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
All right.
Enjoyed it.